what's the use of two strong legs if you only run away? And what use is the finest voice when you have nothing good to say? What good is strength and muscle if you only push and shove? And what's the use of two good ears when you can't hear those you love? It's not just what you're born with, it's what you choose to bear. And it's not how big your share is, but how much you can share. And it's not the fights you dreamed of, but those you really fought. It's not what you've been given, it's what you do with what you've got. Yeah, it's not just what you're born with, it's what you choose to bear. And it's not how big your share is, but how much you can share. And it's not the fights you dreamed of, but those you really fought. It's not what you've been given, it's what you do with what you've got.
Hi friends, welcome back to Seeds of Revolution. This week we are starting a new series of episodes in which we record and post audio versions of different zines we carry in the store. Of course, we will still continue to interview authors, artists, activists, and others who live and work by the values our shop promotes. In addition, starting this week, we will intersperse these episodes with audio versions of zines we think you'll find interesting. This week's zine is Camas versus Capitalism, about how our store and our anarchism interacts with the larger capitalist hegemonic project. We hope you enjoy it. And if you do, you can always drop by the store at 2620 Quadra Street in Victoria from 10 to 6 every day of the week and pick yourself up a copy. And with that, I'll turn it over to Will, Soraya, and Chris to present Camas versus Capitalism.
Camas versus Capitalism. Introduction. Volunteering is a powerful tool for social change, especially when it's conducted in a spirit of mutual aid, which is what Camas fosters, rather than charity. Under the framework of mutual aid, volunteering at Camas contributes to anarchist dual power, also known as structural renewal, whereby anti-capitalist economics competes with capitalism, with the intention of rendering capitalism redundant and ultimately obsolete. While this is a goal that can take a lifetime or longer, it is still worthwhile to pursue, and Camas offers a concrete place to start on this path. Section 1. Profit. Camas doesn't have a capital. Capital is money used to buy something in order to sell it again at a profit, or assets used to produce goods, which can include money, sometimes known as liquid capital, but also refers to factories, rental properties, computers, and so on. Camas produces revenue, and aside from our landlord, none of that revenue goes to a capitalist. We use it to keep the space open, host events, host fundraisers, and give our grants for mutual aid projects. In capitalism, profit is the unpaid labor expropriated from workers and distributed among the capitalist class, because they own the profit. It is the surplus workers produce, but have no control over.
Section 2. Pricing. Capitalists inflate prices to make profit for the capitalist owners. Camas prices inventory based on fair value in relation to our overhead costs, inventory costs, and distributors' needs. We price our new books based on distributors' prices and used books based on the average used book price online. Camas prices merch based on merchant prices, while in-house inventory is priced at the lowest price margins relative to cost and labor. This helps make items accessible. Unlike capitalists, we don't want to plunder the community. We support authors and merchants from backgrounds that are working class, queer, disabled, neurodivergent, BIPOC, feminist, anarchist, and so on. The same applies to our fundraisers. In short, the prices set at Camas do not aid a corporation or CEO, but rather our distributors, fundraisers, and merchants who are from marginalized communities and those who share our values. Section 3. Who is a worker? Capitalism is only possible when you dispossess workers of the means of production, including land. Workers become workers, the proletariat, because they're forced to labor for the owners of capital, the people who own the means of production, in order to earn the money to buy back the things they need to survive. Under capitalism, only a small class of people can ever own the means of production. Everyone else is compelled to work for them, depend on charity, or acquire money by illicit means, though the government sometimes provides a social safety net. Camas is volunteer-owned. Volunteers work here voluntarily, not because of money, but because we believe in what we do. We are building a counter-institution structured around self-governance, mutual aid, innovative initiative, and collective responsibility, ways of being antithetical to capitalism.
Section 4. Work expectations. Capitalism requires corporations to maximize the efficiency and productivity of the labor they employ, leading to stagnant wages and layoffs in the name of the bottom line. Camas volunteers utilize efficiency and productivity as tools to garner results for shared agendas and goals. Camas wants volunteers to contribute within their capacity as long as they're aware of what their capacity is and clearly communicate it to the collective when or if accommodation is needed. We encourage commitment based on division of labor and shared priorities. That way, the load one carries is held aloft by choice, not managed as another burden. We do not engage in what we do under threat of exploitation, force, or being fired. In fact, Camas comes from a long tradition of worker-owned cooperative enterprises in which anarchist productivity far surpassed what's been created in similar capitalist and socialist industries. The federated cooperative movement in Mondragon, Spain, established in 1956, is the best example of the potential for growth inherent in anarchism's economic output. The Mondragon Corporation is respected for combining the best elements of collectivism with individualism to allow for the flourishing of cooperative structures and relations. Likewise, Camas maintains individual initiatives within a collective framework to foster relational growth that can take place hand in hand with economic gain invested back into the communities involved. Section 5. Structure. Capitalist organization is largely top-down, with strict controls on what labor is permitted to do during the time it's employed. Capitalist structure is designed to reinforce hierarchy, every word from the boss is an order, and reproduce capital. Camas is structured horizontally to maximize each member's autonomy while still giving them ample opportunities to contribute to our mission.
Section 6. Top-down versus horizontal conflict resolution. In capitalist businesses, human resources still works for the manager. It imposes corporate policies on employees. In Camas, the safer spaces and volunteer coordinating working groups work towards resolutions that benefit everyone. Collective members are responsible to each other, so accountability goes both ways, rather than only from the top down. Section 7. Two different bottom lines. The basic objective of capitalism is the production and self-expansion of capital. Camas's basic objective is the mission statement, for example, to promote critical analysis of and advocate for alternatives to the exploitative practices of capitalism. It would be wrong to call what we do capitalism, because it misrepresents and undervalues the efforts and intentions of the volunteers within the space.
Section 8. Two different modus operandi. Whereas capitalists use various cunning schemes to benefit themselves, Camas operates on transparency. We are open about our mission because it aims to benefit society. It is easy to be honest about your goals when they are noble. Even if people disagree with you on how possible your goals are, they don't hate you for them. Capitalists, police, politicians, generals, and other authoritarians need to lie about their intentions or no one would support them and they would fail. Section 9. Relationship with the state. Capitalists lobby the political system for subsidies, bailouts, favorable regulations, and other policies, despite their claims about believing in free markets. Camas does not rely on or platform politicians, political parties, or representatives of the government. Capitalists of all stripes, including institutions such as ruling communist parties, use the government to impose their laws on everyone under the state's jurisdiction and, through international organizations, the entire world. Our rules are decided on and agreed to and changed by our members and by way of consensus.
Section 10. Taxes. Camas pays taxes because it's a legal organization. It's necessary to act within the law to remain in business. Capitalists and corporations have access to tax breaks, tax code loopholes, and offshore banking, so the burden of taxes falls to the rest of us. Section 11. Theft. Capitalist corporations steal everything from us and sell it back to us to expand their wealth. Stealing from large corporations is therefore not an antisocial act. Camas has far more limited funds as a volunteer-owned not-for-profit space.
We give all the money we have left after expenses and taxes back to the community, so please do not steal from Camas.
Section 12, quote-unquote, anarcho-capitalism. So-called ANCAPs are minimal state right libertarians that come out of classical liberal tradition. They're not anarchists because they want the state for protecting private property by force and through laws, nor do they oppose any of the other hierarchical or oppressive forces in society such as capitalism, white supremacy, and patriarchy. Their vision does not address the inequality and violence of capital accumulation and property relations. Camas is anarchist, not, quote-unquote, anarcho-capitalist.
Section 13, pinkwashing. Pinkwashing is the corporate co-opting of radical movements of LGBTQIA2S+ people for the purpose of public relations. Camas supports the efforts of queer people to liberate themselves.
Section 14. Charity versus mutual aid. Charity is made necessary because capitalists own all the resources we need to survive. When corporations give or encourage customers to give to select charities, they're doing so for public relations. Charity does not undermine capitalism. It sustains it by serving as a safety valve wherein real social needs are partially addressed so as not to disturb capitalist inequalities. By contrast, mutual aid is people working together to empower themselves, to solve their own problems and those of society in a manner that does not valorize or reinforce capitalist exploitation. Camas has instituted an annual mutual aid grant program that gives thousands of dollars every year to projects in our community. Camas also supports on-the-ground activists and crisis support fundraisers year-round, locally and abroad.
Section 15, transforming community. Camas is a counterforce dedicated to transforming society toward anti-capitalist ends. At times, this will mean we're at odds with those upholding statist and capitalist values, as we create new communities of resistance. We encourage volunteers to start counter-community initiatives within the existing social fabric. Camas is our foundation for community building. The bookstore and community building go hand in hand.
Conclusion. With respect to the revolutionary value of volunteering at Camas, the anarchist Gustav Landauer observes, the state is a social relationship, a certain way of people relating to one another. It can be destroyed by creating new social relationships, i.e., by people relating to one another differently. Volunteering at Camas is relational. We extend our social spheres of influence and action, enhancing egalitarian relationships and creating cultures of resistance and transformation together.
Resources: The Origin of Capitalism by Ellen Meiksiens Wood, Come Hell or High Water by Delfina Vanucci and Richard Singer, Mutual Aid, A Factor in Evolution by Pyotr Kropotkin, Mutual Aid, Building Solidarity During This Crisis and the Next by Dean Spade, The Challenge of Mondragon by George Beneyo in Reinventing Anarchy Again. Editor Howard J. Ehrlich. Gramsci is Dead, Anarchist Currents in the Newest Social Movements by Richard F. Day. Weak Statesmen, Weaker People by Gustav Landauer in Revolution and Other Writings, editor Gabriel Kuhn. The End of Capitalism as We Knew It by J.K. Gibson Graham.
If Jesus Christ came back today like you threaten he will, which poor group of people do you think that he would kill? And who would Jesus choose to starve if you gave him the chance? And if there was a genocide, would he take a neutral stance? Who would Jesus bomb? Tell me, who would Jesus bomb? Would it be kids in Palestine, or how about Vietnam? Would Jesus bomb the atheists, the Muslims, or the Jews? I want you to ask yourself, well, what would Jesus do? I want you to ask yourself, well, what would Jesus do? Would he say it's complicated and there's sinners on both sides? Or would he say that some people, they just deserve to die? If Jesus Christ rose from the dead and on a sidewalk slept, would you extend your hand to him or just watch where you stepped? Who would Jesus bomb? straight, the gay folk, the queer folk, or the trans? Would he suggest they end their lives according to God's plans? Would Jesus tell a homeless man to get a fucking job, or turn his back on the poor? Would Jesus be a snob? Who would Jesus bomb? Tell me, who would Jesus bomb? Would it be kids in Palestine, or how about Vietnam? Would Jesus bomb the atheists, the Muslims, or the Jews? I want you to ask yourself, well, what would Jesus do? I want you to ask yourself, well, what would Jesus do? Would Jesus build a border wall? Would Jesus drive a tank? Would Jesus be a landlord? Would Jesus run a bank? Would Jesus Christ feel safe in his skin if he came to your town? And would you still believe in him if you found out he was brown? Who would Jesus bomb? Tell me, who would Jesus bomb? Would it be kids in Palestine, or how about Vietnam? Would Jesus bomb the atheists, the Muslims, or the Jews? I want you to ask yourself, well, what would Jesus do? I want you to ask yourself, well, what would Jesus do? Yeah, who would Jesus bomb? Tell me, who would Jesus bomb? Would it be kids in Palestine, or how about Vietnam? Would Jesus bomb the atheists, the Muslims, or the Jews? I want you to ask yourself, well, what would Jesus do? I want you to ask yourself, well, what would Jesus do? I want you to ask yourself, well,